that things give problems, but I do everything well. And so looking at the lives of the saints, we learn how they have taken seriously these words of Jesus and how they have made an effort, they've made sacrifices, and they haven't been lukewarm in seeking the kingdom of heaven. They said, no, everything is correct. We did our task. We did our contribution. We didn't steal. But truly, the saints, how far they have reached. We are reading The Servant Brothers, a book about St. John of the Cross. I think it's the biggest book I've ever seen. It's this thick. There's smaller. And so when St. John of the Cross was in prison and they began the Reformation and he had problems within the Carmelite order and he was in the prison for 9 months. And so in that time in prison, he ate little and they fasted and they had he suffered a lot in his community. He hadn't done anything. He was just a confessor of a community. And instead of being embittered, complaining, and getting upset, he wrote the spiritual canticle. And in Advent, he wrote a poem about the incarnation. And afterwards, he wrote the spiritual canticle. He wasn't able to celebrate Mass or leave there. And he writes a song thinking about receiving Jesus in the Eucharist. I see this eternal fountain and this living bread. It's a very beautiful poem. And so all of this, he wrote it instead of being embittered because the sacrifices, he lived the sacrifice with peace. And so when things are very difficult and things, he continued to offer himself. And he says, God leads my life and he knows what he does with me. And so when he left the prison, he had a very difficult time in the prison, and there was a prison guard who let him have times of rest and let him change his clothes. When he decided to escape, it seemed like he was going to die there. He was thinner and thinner, more and more sick. And so he said, I'll have to do something. And so since this prison guard was giving him some more freedom and letting him walk during the siesta, when the prison guard saw how he had left, he said, sick, weak, how could he do that? Look where he... So the angels carried him. It was a miracle that he escaped. So St. John of the Cross gave thanks to God. He recovered himself little by little. And he restarted his life. And in a visit, when he was destined to the south, he visited the convent of the Descalced Carmelites that St. Teresa had founded 3 years before. And then the Carmelites sang a song that went like this. Who doesn't know anything about suffering, doesn't know anything about good things, because sufferings is the garment of lovers. Who doesn't know anything about suffering in this valley of suffering? Who doesn't lived suffering in this world, doesn't know about good things or hasn't tasted love. See things in a different way from how we see it, and that's why St. John of the Cross isn't embittered when things get difficult. And that's why St. John of the Cross is St. John of the Cross, and I am who I am. If we fought against suffering, we would make the sacrifices that were necessary. Lord, I'm happy with whatever you send me. If I have to fast, if I'm taken to the refectory, I have to be willing to do so for everything. I want to give my life, and I know that there's nothing as valid as you. If we have to walk in the night, at night, at the day, at day. So when the sisters sang that song in the convent in Beas, he grabbed the iron of the convent and he asked them to stop. They went quiet and he grabbed the iron in silence, and they would have. St. John of the Cross cried. He didn't move in 1 hour. And he had just come out of prison. They still describe it. The sisters still describe this, how thin he was, and he's in another world. Look at the strength the saints have, the peace, what an interior life he has. So above everything else, he had our Lord. What else could he want? Suffering is the garment of lovers. There's 5 verses, so it's difficult to put music to it. So what do you do with the 5th verse? Love always makes us suffer, because if you love, you give yourself. What else do you need? What is needed? How can I please you? So for the souls that our Lord gives us, we have to make sacrifices. Love is demonstrated in this forgetting of myself, and we have to practice this. We practice this with the little things, leaving behind what was hard for me and doing what is difficult for me. And so this is to make sacrifices. And this has to be present in our life, because otherwise we don't learn to love. And we just stay really small. So we have to be willing to give everything, because that's the only path of love. There's only 2 ways to love. If you don't give yourself, you're being selfish. And to learn to give, you have to practice this. We ask our Lord to help us. So be it.